thank you for joining us and welcome to Guest for Change. My name is Michaela and I'm Head of Sustainability for the Guestlist. Today we will be bridging the gap between generations as we discuss some of the ins and outs of the textile industry from a young woman's perspective. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce you to Annabelle Hutter, founder of Born on Saturday and product director of Textiles. Hello Annabelle, thank you for joining us today. We're super excited to be interviewing you.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited.
Annabelle, when we last spoke, you described yourself as a child of globalization. Can you elaborate on this? How did you come to pursue a career in the textile industry from this?
Well, I think from a young age, I was always exposed, to textiles, whether it was having to move around for my father's job, which was since he was young, it was always in textiles, and my grandfather was also in textiles. So I was always open to that industry and always in an environment which had to do with textiles. And the globalization came in where we would often move around, be it from Singapore to China to Malaysia, and then to Thailand. It was always due to textiles, and it always had an element of textiles in it. I was actually born in Taipei, which is obviously this is a huge polyester capital. For example, Taiwan used to be a major capital for polyester, but my father was there for textile machinery. And yeah, I think I see globalization as just a part of my DNA, and textiles is another strand that comes in as well, and all of it ties in really nicely. So I'm grateful for it.
What do you perceive to be, the biggest problems currently facing the textile industry?
There's a whole spectrum of difficulties that I personally am witnessing. One of those being, for example, the challenges I face as a woman and a female representative in the textile industry, especially because the domain that I am currently working in is incredibly technical. And for me as a young woman, it's kind of unheard of to see someone like me come in and shake things up the way that I'm doing it. I'm bringing something new to the table. I'm bringing more familiarity to the table, which naturally then equates to transparency and, a lot more openness in the industry, which is something that we had not witnessed before. So that's a challenge that I'm facing, and that's a difficulty that the whole industry is facing, is this lack of openness and familiarity and transparency as well. I think another difficulty that we're facing is obviously consumer behavior has been has shifted so much. And a lot of this is due to, for example, the consumerism of fast fashion. Fast fashion has really impacted the way that people consume fashion, and then in turn textiles has been affected as well. So I think from an ethical and environmental point of view, I think fast fashion has really dominated the conversation, and it's brought a lot of difficulties to us. But then at the same time, you could argue that these difficulties then bring on new mindsets and a hope for the future, and technology which is developed in order to provide solutions for this challenge. So it's really exciting at the same time, but it's also this question is very great because you identify the challenges, and from my point of view, those are the two dominant challenges. And then I think the third that I just recently had a conversation about would be global waste management is still at the beginning of it's still a concept, but it's slowly but surely blooming and developing as we speak. I think a lot of legislation around the world is not ready, I guess, for new techniques in the textile industry with respect to waste management of discarded textiles, for example. I think that there is it's very slow, it's sluggish right now. So that's another challenge that I'm facing.
Thank you for that, because firstly, I think there's a lot of challenges that people are not aware of, and I'm interested to ask these questions a bit later in our interview and unpack these challenges a bit further. But to give an understanding, because you spoke about the hope of the future, and the Guestlist Change focuses on circularity. So what exactly is your understanding of circularity?
Well, my understanding of circularity is it evolves every day. one minute it'll be one thing, and then the next minute I discover something else, and it flourishes into something new, and I have all these new ideas and thoughts about it. But definitely what comes around goes around. I think that, you know, we're like you have at Guests for Change and the Guestlist, you have this concept of we're only guests on this planet, and so whatever we put into this planet, we need to keep it flowing and keep it circular, and whatever, you know, whatever we have, we can always use. And I think people have become so complacent to the idea of just discarding things and then closing that chapter. Whereas for me, I think that it's important to really keep the book open and keep the narrative open. And circularity is so much more than just recycling. It should be a way of life. And for me, it's really important that whatever, I mean, there's no such thing as trash. It's all treasure. And I believe that the concept of waste is very outdated. And so when I look at circularity, I think that, yeah, it's just so many elements, but the main thing would be that waste it's just non-existent. You can do anything with waste, you know, it's so cool.
I love that. I love that you said waste is cool, because it's the whole point of circularity. But I guess there is a differentiation of sustainability and circularity, and a lot of people know what the trend word is of sustainability and what that means. But how is your understanding different circularity from sustainability?
I think that sustainability has become such in a sense, a keyword, but also a trigger word. I think that everyone nowadays is throwing around the word sustainability because it's an easy word to use. It's easy marketing. It's a keyword which a lot of brands and companies feel that consumers will gravitate towards. So I'm really now careful and conscious of the impact of the word sustainability. And that's really great that you asked, because circularity takes it one step further. It's actually confronting this idea of waste being, for example, a colonial construct that has been embedded in us, that waste is bad and waste belongs in a landfill and that kind of thing. So I think that it's important. Circularity for me is a step forward and a step deeper into the whole conversation of sustainability.
I couldn't agree with you more. And I guess this leads into the next question. So what about circularity do you wish everyone knew about?
I wish that everyone knew that it's possible to recycle cotton waste into new fabrics. I think that the one challenge I face as a brand owner as well as a fabric director is that people are just stunned that you could even take cotton waste that has been discarded or is sitting in a landfill, or could be, old shreds from factory floors, that you could even recycle this into a complete line of new fabrics. I think that that's for me so incredible. I think that the fact that it is possible is just in itself something that I would like people to know exists.
Exactly. And then that's where your business comes in. And I think that's just amazing, because people don't know further than the face value, I guess. So leading on to the next question. How can we educate the younger generations about circularity? Are we currently educating them enough?
I think this is such a fascinating question. I think that no, we don't educate the young generation about the opportunities that we have in circularity and in fashion and textiles. I think that this is really now dependent on brands and on companies, textile companies. They're the ones that have to bring the dialogue to the table, and they have to present the narrative. But I think that in terms of school, kids are not aware of recycling and circularity. It's just still at its basis of let's recycle paper and let's, separate our trash. And but to go further, there's no conversation about that yet. There's a couple of foundations that are, for example, the Slow Factory. They are really conscientious about talking about recycling and waste. But I think that in terms of formal education, there needs to be more of a push. And I'm a little bit afraid that the younger generation are still not aware of it. But that's where I come in, really. My brand, it talks and it sets the narrative. And with every customer that I sell the bag to, my bag, I will, inform them, and whether it's on the message that I write to thank them, or whether it's the label that is printed on the bag, it is a direct message in order to educate those younger, but also my age, and then also older. I want that dialogue to be created. I want people to get curious, and hopefully kids who see the bag or who buy it will understand, okay, well, this is another world that is possible, and therefore I should really have a part in this, and hopefully be able to push it to the future as well.
I love that you said, like, this is a world that's possible and it's something that I can be a part of. And I guess going back to your challenges, when you said that you faced being a woman in the industry, and how exactly, how do you navigate through this? How do you navigate through this challenge of being a woman in a male dominant industry?
Well, that's funny because I actually think it has something to do with my heritage. First of all, I am half Asian. So it's a culture clash when we look at my heritage. I'm half Asian, but I'm also half European. So those two, in terms of accepting a woman in an industry like textiles, in Asia, it's still unheard of. It's still it's quite rare. I go to meetings with bigger textile companies, and I will be the only woman of my age sitting around the table, and it's still such an awkward concept. And they treat you a little bit differently. They're very soft, and I'm like, no, you can treat me the same way. The way you're speaking to, for example, my father, you can speak to me. I'm a fabric director. I know what I'm talking about. But naturally, they're just not. They're not acquainted with this concept. So for me, I don't see it as a challenge. I see it more as a victory. I think the fact that I am sitting at that table, and I am also engaging in that dialogue, it probably, makes them think, oh, well, today this young woman was at the table, and she was, discussing yarns and discussing prices and quantities and all of that. And so therefore, we need to make way for that generation. And we also need to accept that women are going to be in textiles, they're going to be more predominant, and it's not going to be just women in garment factories, because that's a huge problem. The fact that men have been on the top, and then women have in textiles always been the small percent, but really only at the bottom of the pyramid. So I think that, I'm a pinnacle in, I don't want to glorify myself, but I feel like at least I'm silently bringing some kind of change by just being there. But in Europe, when I'm dealing with European clients or European companies, it's not as crazy, but definitely my age is a little bit, you can tell that they're judging a little bit. but it's not a bad judgment. I just think, again, it's something that people just need to be exposed to, and they need to see that in order for things to change. And if I'm the only girl doing it for the foreseeable future, I'm really happy for that. But I hopefully can inspire other girls to join the textile industry, whether it's getting involved in fabrics and understanding machinery and just going into the nitty-gritty. I think it's a really cool industry. So I would definitely encourage women to get involved.
Person that a previous guest that we interviewed, Carla Mafruder, she's literally making waves in the textile industry, and she has for almost 30 years or so. So you are now introducing women into the whole conversation of the textile industry, and that's amazing. And I know many women are perhaps wanting to go into the same career path. So do you have any advice for other women who may be facing similar challenges?
I think definitely just stay true to yourself. I know it sounds so corny. Being yourself and bringing your edge and bringing your, I mean, women by nature, we're more soft spoken, but we're also more detail oriented. And I think it's a good mix. It's such a nice melange between all the male energy and female energy. If you bring it into the textile industry, it becomes very productive. So my advice would just be stay true to yourself, do what you love, and if you love it, it'll translate in all your work, and people will be inspired by that. And then it doesn't matter what gender you are.
I love that. Thank you for the advice. I mean, it goes a long way. So on to our next question. How is it possible for both industries and the consumers to become change makers?
I had this conversation as well yesterday, and I think just educating yourself, whether it's on social media, whether it's through journals, whether it's through reading the newspaper and getting more facts on the textile industry. That's one way for sure. But I also think engaging with a lot of the sustainable brands that are out there, if they're really in it for if they have good intentions, they will, if you reach out to them, they'll hopefully have a dialogue with you where you can learn also about, the behind the scenes of that brand and what makes it so different and what makes it sustainable and what makes it circular. So I think that, for example, that's a very personal way to get involved and get information. But I think on a broader level, I think for me, I see a lot of my friends are victims of fast fashion, for example, and just slowing down, just conscientiously taking the step to slow down your buying habits, your spending habits, to actually think twice about, if you're looking at a piece of clothing in, for example, Zara, thinking about, oh, well, this is so cheap, but then what actually happens behind it? Where does this, oh, it's 100% polyester, or it's a blend, that doesn't sound so good. Or what is polyester coming from? Or nylon, oh, it's a synthetic. What is a synthetic, right? I think just reading care labels, using Google, and maybe, I learned a lot through watching YouTube videos. Just really in your head, building that mindset of I can change things by slowing down my spending habits, and what good is that going to do? It's just all about a mindset.
Exactly. And I love how you said just being conscious of actually slowing down. And that's the whole point of just being conscious with your purchases. It's just inevitable that it will eventually happen, and you'll realize you don't actually need all the excess. Moving from that question and a build on, how do we as consumers who care tell the difference between realistic transparency and greenwashing?
That's a really tough one, because, as I said, nowadays brands and companies are using keywords as marketing pretty much, and like you said, greenwashing. It's just because the keyword sounds attractive that they'll be using these techniques for consumers. So I think one of the main things would be definitely look at certification. If a brand can offer certificates of their fabrics, if a brand can offer reassurance in terms of, for example, not just GRS for my case, but also there's Okotex, there's Intertech. All the different stages have their own certifications and quality tests, which can then verify the product that you're buying. So I would really say look into that. If you don't understand these certifications, by all means, again, there's so much information out there, or the brand should really be telling you what these certifications are, and be open to asking these questions. They'll answer. And if they don't answer, then you have a red flag. And also signs of transparency. If a brand is willing to open up their supply chain and explain their supply chain and tell you exactly where it's coming from, not just where the bag or t-shirt is made, that's really important, but every step, because a supply chain might not just be in one country, it could be in several countries. So for example, my bag, I literally print on my bag that it is certified by GRS, RCS, Okotex, but then also in the background we have Intertech, we work with all these different foundations like the International Labor Organization. So that's there on the label. But then also I write that the fabric is actually woven, or the yarns are spun in Turkey, the fabric is woven in Turkey, the waste itself is collected in Turkey and then recycled in Turkey. And the bag is then made in Thailand. So I want my consumers to understand my supply chain off the bat. And I think every brand should be doing that, because that will help people who are already trying to conscientiously be eco-friendly. It'll help them to get forward and move forward in that domain.